Welcome to Carmen Cooks, where we talk about nutrition and biochemistry. Today we're going to talk about the vital role of niacin in pregnancy and lactation, and this can also, the information I'm going to share with you about niacin also applies to other states as well. Niacin is a central regulator in your metabolism. It plays a role of shuttling hydrogens, and it also can accept protons. And by the movement of hydrogens, this fuels cellular processes. So almost every enzymatic reaction in your body requires either changes in electrons or changes in the movement of hydrogens. And NAD comes from niacin. Niacin generates NAD and NADPH. NADPH is generated through the pentose phosphate pathway. And both NAD and its translation to NADH and NADPH and NADP and NADPH also play roles in shuttling hydrogen. So it just depends what is happening in the body and what reaction is occurring, whether the NAD form is used or the NADP form is used. And both of these have H's on them, hydrogens as well. We've got our shiitake mushrooms. My ratio for this recipe, I like to use 4 parts of stock to 1 part of rice to 1 part of mushrooms. Today I have lots of mushrooms because I felt like buying lots of mushrooms, and I'm going to use 2-part mushrooms. So I have 4 cups of mushrooms, and I'm going to use 2 cups of brown rice. And we're going to prep that, and I will keep talking to you about niacin. I'm going to first wash the brown rice, my 2 cups. Niacin is particularly important in pregnancy, and this is shown by the fact that niacin metabolites increase 2.3 times throughout the duration of pregnancy, specifically in the 2nd and 3rd trimester. And this is why during these trimesters you can almost need double the RDA, though I'm not sure how you can actually take that without supplementation. Supplementation can be done, but it should be kept at a limited amount if you do supplement. The RDA for pregnancy is 18 milligrams per day. For lactation is 17 milligrams per day. And these values were taken from non-pregnant women, and they added factors to allow for pregnancy, fetal growth, milk production, these sort of things. Though how these things were estimated is not elucidated in the current governing recommending bodies. The basis of their research, they discuss for most nutrients where the data came from. This is one particular aspect. They just say that it was extrapolated and based on factors estimating these additional changes that happened during pregnancy. Now the recommendations for women were taken from men. So as you can see, our recommendations for pregnancy and lactation come from men, and extrapolation of other factors related to pregnancy and the lactating state. Kind of like to mix this up. If you're in a real hurry, you can pour the rice in there with the water and let it sit for 5 minutes, and that washes it. It is important when deciding to supplement niacin that you do not exceed the tolerable upper limit. Now the general consensus on water-soluble vitamins is they're excreted by the kidney and by the system in the body, but niacin doesn't seem to have this effects. And now we don't really know if niacin is stored in the body and if there's intracellular stores. It's important when regarding a supplement to not exceed the tolerable upper limit of 35 micrograms. Oh my God, it's milligrams. Tryptophan and niacin metabolism increases by 2 to 3 times. If you're not aware of this, niacin actually can be generated in the body through the metabolism of tryptophan, an amino acid. So that's why you see these weird recommendations for niacin equivalents. It essentially means how much niacin can be taken from the food based on the tryptophan amounts in the food. And I pour the rice back in my bowl, and I'm going to pour water on there and let that sit. My 2nd or 3rd washing of brown rice, I will pour the water off into a cup and use that to rinse my hair to make this gorgeous action you see happening here natural. And tryptophan is especially important during pregnancy and lactation because it is a central metabolic factor. which means that it is used in almost every aspect of metabolism. Niacin becomes extra important during pregnancy because of its roles in hormone synthesis, and it plays a role in synthesis of steroid hormones, of progesterone, of the mineralocorticoids, of androgens, of endosterone, so the precursor for estrogen. And this means that if you don't have enough niacin, you're going to affect your hormonal balance. And it just goes to show you once again how eating a balanced diet where you're getting enough of all the nutrients is going to be the best way to fuel your baby and fuel your life for optimal genetic success. And niacin also plays a role in maintaining the genetic code and genetic stability and telomerase integrity. And this is not just important in pregnancy, but also in regards to aging. A lot of aging processes because you don't have a lot of nutrients. Like me, take me, I look 25 years younger than I really am, but that's because I'm getting all the nutrients and my telomeres are not shortening. Also because of the meditation I'm doing every day for 25 years, 22 years and counting. That, because I believe I actually started some form of meditation when I was 16, but I didn't really realize it was meditation, but it was kind of like a morning lay down with my face mask that I love to have in the morning to cool my eyes. Before I knew about natural diet, a good diet to prevent puffy eyes, and I had a less than optimal diet. Niacin is super important during pregnancy for regulating all the cycles in your body, and almost every single cycle in your body is important to niacin. You need niacin for synthesis of lipids, for breakdown of lipids. You need niacin for changing proteins to different proteins. I'm going to get 3 ounces of Parmesan cheese and grate this up. Niacin is important in amino acid metabolism, carbohydrate metabolism, lipid metabolism, from changing glucose to glycogen and then glycogen back to glucose. It plays a huge role. And speaking of niacin's role in glucose metabolism and taking supplements, which is what we were talking about just before, is if you have metabolic disease or gestational diabetes or diabetes, you should not take a niacin supplement, even in the 2nd or 3rd trimester, because of niacin's role in glucose metabolism. It can cause increased glucose dysregulation, and you do not want that to happen because that's going to cause disease later, and it's going to interfere with nutrient uptake and sugar uptake by you and the fetus, which is not a good thing. This looks so good. I just really want one extremely important role that niacin has in pregnancy and maintaining a healthy pregnancy state is its role in your main antioxidant molecule, glutathione. Glutathione is in the form of GSH. When glutathione is oxidized, then you have GSSG, and then you have NADPH plus a hydrogen from the pentose phosphate pathway, and that is oxidized to NADP, thereby reducing the GSSG into GSH, or glutathione. And this happens with glutathione reductase. So you don't need to remember all that unless you're a scientist and you just wanted to know for fun, but I find it interesting because it just shows that you have to have enough of these niacin metabolites, the NADPH, in order to keep your glutathione in a reduced state so it can prevent the oxidation of other things. So basically glutathione allows itself to be oxidized. It's like glutathione's like, hey, I gotta take care of this mess. Let me go and get rid of these oxidants. How do I do that? Well, I become oxidized. So glutathione takes on those oxidants by giving its electron to other species. And this is super important because there are very high levels of ROS, or radical oxygen species, generated during pregnancy. And just in general, high levels of these oxidants generated all throughout pregnancy, all throughout your life. And part of this is a positive because your body makes the effort to generate a higher level of oxidants, because this stimulates different pathways involved in fetal growth beyond the scope of this video in my brain, because I'm not an embryologist. nutritionist, so let's focus on the nutrition. But NAD is very important in maintaining high levels of glutathione, because the negative part is those radical oxygen species, or the oxidants, once they have their illicit effect, then all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, ooh, this is a lot of cheese, it's going to be delicious. You don't have to add cheese. I used to make this recipe when I was vegan with just the miso and the mushrooms and the mushroom stock. I mean, it's amazing. Using dairy and all these canned chemicals and risotto and expensive restaurants is such a travesty. Truffle oil, like, no, you don't need truffle oil. You need to make my mushroom stock. I digress. Glutathione is very important in maintaining redox state in the cell that's healthy, and this plays all different roles, from the membranes to PRAP, which is a polymerase, and that goes around repairing DNA damage, and it prevents oxidation of DNA itself. It prevents damage to the membranes. You know, if membranes of cells get damaged, this can have a wide range of effects. You can have the membrane of the mitochondria be damaged and oxidized if you don't have enough glutathione, because you don't have enough NAD being generated, because you're not eating enough protein containing foods containing tryptophan, and you're not consuming enough niacin. And so then your cell's like, oh my god, the lipid membranes are being destroyed, they're being oxidized, we're getting all wrinkled and we're going to explode in the membrane. And then the mitochondria is like, I'm swelling, too much water, too bad osmotic pressure, incorrect osmotic pressure, and starts freaking out, and then like explodes or something. And then you have no energy because you have no ATP, and then the other process in your body can't work. And then the cascade continues. It's really crazy about how oxidant cascades happen, and then the same effect plays a role in neurogenesis. And you know, NAD, it does play a role in hormone production, like dopamine and serotonin, but it also plays a role in maintaining the myelination state in a healthy, positive status, so that the myelination of the membrane, which is created by fats, stays, what's the word I'm looking for? It's opposite of labile. It remains in a high fidelity state, which means that it stays in a good state where it's supposed to be. Like, I want this cheese to be all broken up here. I don't want this. If this cheese then turned back into this because it got oxidized, that would be weird. You don't want that. You know, I grated it because it needs to be grated for my recipe. And the same with the cells, making things in a certain form, in a certain structural form, because that structural form is conducive to the operation of the cell, whether it's transport of nutrients across membranes, movement of items, repair of DNA, repair of mitochondria, repair of the lipid bilayer of membranes, preventing oxidation of neuronal cells so you can have proper neuronal growth and proper neuronal migration. You need all these things to happen in the cell, and all throughout the body, not just in one little place in your liver or just in the mitochondria, it's everywhere. And so this molecule, glutathione, is in the cytoplasm, and it's also inside of mitochondria, which is, you know, and it's in the intercellular spaces, so that the cell prevents oxidative stress from happening. And you can have two options. You can fry the mushrooms. Some people fry the mushrooms up before. I like to make everything really simple and easy, because my god, I gotta make something to eat 3 times a day, sometimes 4, and it's a lot of fucking work. So I just put the mushrooms in towards the end as the rice is cooking. And I like to put the portobello mushrooms, you know, portobello mushrooms, shiitake mushrooms, and the oyster mushrooms. They all have 2 to 3 milligrams of niacin, and that's a super good source of niacin. Now, it is a vegetable source, and you know, mushrooms are very light. They are mostly water, so you can eat a lot of them, which is why I added a lot here. Just in this recipe here, say I get 3, 6, 9, 12, about 10 to 12 milligrams of niacin just from these mushrooms. And then I have like 8 other cups of mushrooms in my stock. And when you make a water-based broth, especially when you add a little oil in and a little salt in, it helps pull out the nutrients. And if they're fat soluble and if they're water soluble, they're coming out in the water. And the salt helps a little bit with that process. Remember to add the salt to your stock and miso, and then you add the miso to the rice and we cook it. So I'm going to drain this rice here and we'll get it started on the stove cooking. And one thing I love about risotto is you actually don't have to attend it as much as you think you do, like they say, but just towards the end you have to attend it. And you can do other things, be cooking other things, cleaning up the kitchen. There's always a million cleaning things to do. Goodness gracious. Great balls of fire! A lot of ways that lipid peroxides are generated is by Fenton reaction involving iron and lipid peroxides. So you have the lipid bilayer, it gets oxidized, and then iron gets in there and causes the Fenton reaction, which is basically lots of electrons going in the wrong place and oxidizing things, oxidizing your cell things, because iron is a very reactive substance. And if you want to know more about that and the details of that, you should check out my book Nourishing Generations, which covers vitamins and minerals for pregnancy and lactation in detail, as well as some other unclassified nutrients. And I also give tables about when you need more of one nutrient and less of one nutrient. For example, with let me put the rice on. Let the rice get started cooking in the mushroom broth, and I will eventually add more mushroom broth as broth boils away. And that depends on your pan, your ambient temperature, how much flame you have, and if you have a top on your lid. I like to keep a top on until that rice gets nice and soft. It does take much longer with the brown rice, but brown rice has the high levels of niacin. Other foods that have high levels of niacin, like fish, the vegetable items generally have 3, 6, 7, 8 milligrams of niacin in them, whereas a serving of fish, one serving of salmon, can have 18 milligrams of niacin. I mean, that's the pregnancy RDA. The lactation is 17 milligrams per day, and it's just slightly higher than a regular woman's RDA of niacin. Now that the rice has been cooking a little while, let's add some mushrooms into that baby. Start allowing the moisture to evaporate and uncover it. The rice is about halfway cooked, as you can see here. It's soft, you can eat it, but we want to dissolve all the liquid. There are a number of factors that are going to affect niacin in the body, and some of this is because these factors are required for tryptophan to be converted into niacin, and that includes vitamin B6, riboflavin, iron levels of protein. These all are aspects that affect niacin's conversion, but there are also aspects in some foods, especially in brown rice. The brown rice, like we're doing today, has a lower bioavailability of niacin than other foods such as fish, and this is because in whole grains and sometimes in legumes you have the niacin. It's bound to other compounds, nicotinides and nicotinogens, and these compounds prevent niacin from being released. And this is why we do things like soak the rice overnight with baking soda. That releases the niacin, and then you can add it to your pan. I didn't do that here, but it is an option, and it's very well. But that is an excellent option for increasing your niacin levels. And if you remember the night before to soak your rice with a little baking soda or alkali, that's why tortilla, that can increase the amount of effective niacin in your body. And remember, the amount of effective niacin in your body can be decreased, even though if you're getting enough, by these compounds in your foods, or as well as being lacking in other nutrients such as animal protein, B6, iron, riboflavin. All these factors play a role. So make sure that you're getting a well-rounded diet, and that's why I really promote an omnivore diet centric on plants with eggs, fish, and very small amounts of meat and very small amounts of dairy, like we have here. And one serving is going to be this much dairy, but this is Parmesan, and we're talking about a diet for pregnancy and lactation, not a diet for healing from inflammatory disease or any of the myriad of other diseases or issues that you can have. And it's very important to eat according to where you are in your life stage. If you're in a life stage like pregnancy, you have different nutrient needs and different tolerances, and your body is going to react differently to different foods than in other stages. And so food really is a tool to heal and become not only the best self you can be, but also give your child the best chance they have in life. Because isn't it just lovely to have a child who's so smart and so capable and so strong and who runs around and can do kung fu after seeing it one time? I mean, like, I don't know, if you want to make a Matrix child Neo, here's how to do it. The reason why we had a lot of traditional fermentation methods for making bread was because this released the niacin in the food. And you see this is why tortillas, the kind you want to get, are treated with lime. Lime is an alkali solution, and that liberates the niacin in the corn so it can be taken up so you don't get pellagra. Pellagra is the disease that's caused by niacin deficiency. And remember that a lot of things when we're doing these vitamins and minerals, these diseases are seen when someone's our RDA is set up for preventing a disease state, not for maximal functioning. We have to remember that the RDA should be seen as a minimum. And then we go from there depending upon what life stage we're in and what our body needs at that point. And the 3Ds, dermatitis, diarrhea, and delusions, dementia. So basically, if you have poor brain function, if you have skin problems, if you have diarrhea, these are the 3 things that are caused by severe niacin deficiency. But if you get to that point, honestly, you're like almost dead. You should just die. At this point, you want to stir every 2 minutes to get the moisture evaporated. Prevent it from sticking. Here it's starting to stick, so I'm going to add more. What I love about using a wooden spoon is I can get all that free. So take from my big pot, add more broth. You can have one. Yes. Ooh, let's add this in. But just remember, effective levels can also be decreased by adrenaline and estrogen levels in the body, because this also inhibits the conversion of tryptophan to niacin. And so, for example, if you're after pregnancy and you're estrogen dominant and your body is producing too much estrogen because you're not eating enough zinc, and then the estrogen interferes with niacin conversion, and so then you have effective low levels of niacin, and then that will cause other problems in your metabolic cycles. Now, this is on a very small scale, but it goes to show you how the body works in a concerted mechanism, and really the idea that we can just take one medication that triggers one biochemical pathway, to me is absurd, because that affects so many other pathways in the body. And the body works together in a holistic and concerted manner. So it's really important that you are following practices such as fermentation of bread, or following my bread recipes where we do overnight soaking, and this releases the niacin. It's not a big deal. You just add the yeast and the bread, mix it together, and you make your soaker and your biga, and you have some yeast in your bread and water, and that causes the release of niacin from these cereal grains so that you get enough niacin in your body. Let's add this cheese into our risotto that's ready for it. At the end, you add 2 large tablespoons of miso, and we're going to turn off the heat at this point. You see how we have all the gelatinous, all that rice gluten that has come out of the rice. We're going to stir that in. And at this point in time, we'll also add our Parmesan cheese. Doesn't that look beautiful? Be sure to use real Parmesan, not the kind that comes grated up in a can. That kind is full of whey, emulsificants, compounds that you don't want in your body. You need the real Parmesan that you grate yourself, or if you don't grate it, it needs to come from the deli. That is not beautiful. Conversely, there are other factors that increase the conversion of tryptophan to niacin. One of those we saw was pregnancy, where your niacin tryptophan metabolism or tryptophan niacin metabolism increases by up to 2.3 times, which some researchers say that women should be taking double the RDA during this time. Now, I find that a little bit hard to intake unless you were eating a piece of salmon every day, 3 ounces of sockeye salmon every day, plus a healthy diet with plenty of dishes like this could do it. Which then goes to show you how important fish is and why we have fish is a superfood during pregnancy as long as it's low mercury. Now, thyroxine, a high quality, high protein diet, and malate esters, and sufficient, riboflavin, B6, and iron also promote sufficient levels of niacin and promote the conversion of tryptophan to niacin. Consuming enough unsaturated fatty acids also promote the conversion of tryptophan to niacin. And where do you get unsaturated fatty acids? Just think polyunsaturated fatty acids, monounsaturated fatty acids, sunflower seeds, nuts, olive oil. I use coconut oil in this recipe, but olive oil would have been wonderful to promote the synthesis and production of niacin in your body. And this is all for tonight. I'm going to plate up that beautiful dish for you, and let's see how delicious it looks, and let's add a side of fried fish perhaps. Nourishing Generations, a nutrition manual for pregnancy and lactation, specifically geared for professionals in the field of pregnancy and lactation. And if you're a mom, it's a great reference tool to compare all your vitamins. It has wonderful, useful tables in the back, and I think just the tables themselves are a useful tool to have in your pantry and to be able to take out your vitamins and compare that. Or if you have a question about a trimester or a nutrient, you can look up it. It's sorted by nutrients. And then I have my manual on how to cook recipes such as this and how to keep yourself fed during pregnancy and lactation. It's called Staying Fed, and it's a 26-week series where you have 5 days a week where everything the pregnant or lactating woman will eat, and it shows you how to manage your kitchen. It gives fun science tips, everything you can imagine, and in a format that's not your basic recipe. For example, we might make chop mushrooms and use it in 3 different dishes, or we might make mushroom risotto and then turn it into a casserole, and then we might make a salsa and use that on 4 different dishes in the week. And it's just a really fun way to coordinate and plan your cooking and get all the nutrients. And it has all the nutrient tables. You are guaranteed to get 100% of your RDA for both pregnancy and lactation. And of course, these time periods are different and you have different needs, and so that's why in the manual there's extra tips given, and you get if you're pregnant, for example, 1 week you might have carrot juice twice in the week, but the lactating woman is then going to have some molasses on her, blackstrap molasses only on her oatmeal. And I'm not going to tell you why, because you have to check out the book, but I hope you enjoy it, and that's a wonderful resource. Even if you don't follow it through and through, just doing 2 or 3 weeks can give you some excellent skills in the kitchen. And it has a section on basics and a section on rice and grains and baking and sauces, and it's plant-based. So there are some fish recipes, and there are, I think there's 1 meat recipe, 1 chicken recipe, maybe 2. But the majority of recipes are plant-based, and I would say it's more of a pescatarian, ovo-pescatarian, plant-based recipe book with the occasional extra protein thrown in to get all your nutrients, or fish salmon salad, or with beets and yogurt chipotle dressing, which is like 5-minute recipe. Yogurt sumac dressing. Just mix the sumac, lemon juice, and yogurt, and it's like done. And then you get all kinds of tips on how you should eat, what you should eat, when you should eat it, and tips are given per trimester as well. So you're given outlines like, hey, this trimester, if you're in this trimester, you should have this, or if this trimester, you should have this. And a lot of the recipes actually just work for every single stage you're in. So, but when it doesn't, you're given the tips and the guidance for that. This is Carmen Cooks. Come back and see me, y'all. Those portobello mushrooms. Mom goes, we put 4 cups of mushrooms in there with 2 cups of brown rice, and we used 8 to 10 cups of our stock. And that's it. There is your beautiful dish. Thank you. Come on, boo. Where's your knife? You washed it earlier. You washed it and you set it out. There it is.